Hey guys, today we're going to talk about a monster $3,000 RTX 3080 build. I'm going to show you guys everything that you need and everything that you need to know for a really awesome gaming computer to absolutely crush any CPU bottlenecks, anything that can come your way. So let's get started and let's talk about the build. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Remember to subscribe, makes me very happy. Smash that like button. Follow me on social media, links are below. I always have a lot of updates on there as well. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk about this monster $3,000 RTX 3080 build. As you can see, it's purring right along behind me. And I decided to make all the LED lights white just to match the RTX 3080 Founders Edition LED as well. That way it looks really good, really sleek. You don't have to do that. You can put it in rainbow mode. Sometimes I do that. First, let's talk about the star of the show, and that's going to be the Nvidia RTX 3080. Now, at $699, this represents one of the best values for a high-end GPU that we've ever seen. Absolutely crushes last generation. Games perform absolutely well. I've been playing behind me here. I have two monitors. I have a 1080p 240Hz esports BenQ monitor. That way you get like the highest, craziest refresh. And on the other end here, I don't know if you can see it, I have a 4K Acer 144Hz monitor with HDR. That way, that's pretty much the best of both worlds. Really beautiful HDR resolution versus really high refresh rate gaming. 1080p is not going to look as good, but it's going to look really fast, like Quake Champions or something like that, which is one of my favorite games. And specifically, this 3080 is the Founders Edition. We've talked at length about the specific Founders Edition GPU as compared to, of course, a third-party partner card, which is going to have a little bit of a different cooler. The cooler design on this Founders Edition GPU is absolutely unique and very exceptional. It's a lot quieter than previous generation Founder design coolers, as well as having just a really nice pass-through design. I think it looks really, really awesome. As soon as I can get my hands on a specific cable modders cable, like a custom cable for that 12-pin connector, I'm definitely going to do that. That way, I think it's going to clean it up a lot more. But in general, I must say that the Founders Edition is my absolute favorite 3080, just because it's such a unique look that we've never seen a GPU that really looks like this before. Not to mention that this time the performance is actually exceptional, as well as the cooling performance with its pass-through design. And for the CPU, it definitely has to be a 10900K for a build like this. That way you can ensure you're not going to get any CPU bottlenecks, just because the 10900K just clocks so high. It's such a fantastic, powerful CPU. Of course, in other builds, I also use Ryzen. I have a 3950X, so I love AMD as well. Generally, they're going to have really good multi-threaded performance, amongst other things. They're a little bit better value for the money. But when we're talking about really maximizing the 3080, the CPU that I trust the most is the 10900K. It just brings out much better numbers than basically anything else. Sometimes it's not a massive difference, and that's why some people may be swayed to go to a different CPU or platform. But when you're looking for the maximum performance, I think this is it. And if you guys remember, even Nvidia did their benchmarks with the 10900K when they were first testing this GPU as well. And of course, for the motherboard, here we're using the Asus Z490 Apex motherboard. Now, this is a surprisingly good motherboard for everyday use. It has like a lot of USB ports. It even has a DIMM.2 slot where you can put M.2 solid state drives. So it's really nicely fully featured. Not to mention that traditionally the Apex is the best for overclocking, and if you have a 10900K, you definitely want to overclock it to get the best performance. That's only going to help you when you're playing with the 3080, especially if you're doing like 1080p high refresh rate. You definitely need this CPU to really push it to the utmost limit. And to cool the CPU, generally I water cool my systems, but this is sort of like my test system, so I decided to slap on the brand new Corsair 360mm Elite Cappelix AIO. Now this is a very new AIO. If you guys can tell, the cooler design is definitely a lot different than before. We're using these ML Pro RGB fans. They now go to a much higher RPM than the first generation ones did. So this AIO is definitely fantastic, not only with the performance, but also with the visual aspects. It looks really good. You definitely need something like this for the 10900K. Even overclocked, if I run something like Cinebench, generally I'll get at most like somewhere like 72 Celsius, sometimes even lower. So it's definitely a great performer, and it looks really good as well. And of course, to complement the Corsair AIO, we're using the Corsair Dominator RGB Ram. Ever since this RAM came out, it's been one of my favorite go-tos. I think it looks really good, not to mention it's extremely high quality. Here we're actually running 3466 megahertz RAM. It's going to be a little bit faster than 32. I don't want to go too high and cause instability issues. I also don't want to go too low and have any performance losses. I think for the price and for this system, this RAM slots in perfectly. And who are we kidding? It didn't matter what the performance was. The RGB syncs with the AIO, and it looks absolutely phenomenal. And of course, you guys will notice there were only 2 slots for RAM on this particular motherboard. That's because the less RAM sticks that you have, the more stable that overclocking and things of that nature can be. If you have more than 2 sticks of RAM, like 4 on some motherboards, you just add a lot more complexity, especially when you're overclocking. So that's the point of the Apex motherboard. It really is an overclocking motherboard, and it has much tighter controls, and that's why you're going to see the 2 RAM slots, basically just to optimize overclocking as much as possible. And of course, for the drives, we're using the Samsung 970 Pro NVMe drives. These are fantastic. We're using the 1 terabyte models. Very fast. I usually like to use 1 for my operating system and maybe another 1 or 2 to have games on and things of that nature. This system I also like to do some content creation with because it's so powerful, using something like DaVinci Resolve or even Premiere Pro. Anytime you're doing that, of course, you got to add a little bit more hard drives just to make sure you have all of your footage backed up. You could also add some more SATA 2.5-inch solid state drives as well. This case has a lot of space for it. And speaking of the case, this is the Bequiet Darkbase 700.
Launch sequence.
Ever since I did my initial build in this, I've absolutely loved it. I love the RGB strip in the front. It's an ultra quiet case. That's why it's called Bequiet when you have all the panels closed. But the airflow is still surprisingly good for a case that has more restricted airflow. Overall, I just love the build quality, how things are put together, how it integrates, how it visually and aesthetically looks. It's definitely a really nice case. And I think for a build like this with high-end components, you don't want to put it into a cheap case. That's why this Bequiet Darkbase 700, I think really fits in nicely. It also comes with a fan controller in the back, and you can actually control the different fan settings right from the front of the case, which is actually really useful. Sometimes you want to put the fans up or down without having it ramping up in software or having to go into your actual computer inside the settings and change anything. So that's really cool. Sometimes I use it if I know that I'm going to be playing a game or something like that. I just flip the switch up a little higher, get those fans going, and as soon as I'm done, I just put it back down. It's definitely a great way to have some physical control over your computer while not having to have fan software open or anything like that. So this build is basically designed and built around the RTX 3080. It's meant to optimize the amount of performance you're going to be pulling from this, and definitely in gaming, and you'd be surprised at how good a system like this is for content creation. Back in the day, you had to have like 18 core processors in order to take advantage of different content creation apps, but nowadays so many things are relying on the GPU, programs like DaVinci Resolve, even Premiere Pro, that something like the 3080 with a 10900K absolutely flies through any type of application that you have, not to mention giving you basically the best performance in gaming that we have available to us today until the 3090. Definitely the best performance that we have available to us today. Aside from the 3080, the 3090 is really the only one that's going to beat it. But for gaming optimized performance, this is definitely the sweet spot. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe, leave a comment below. Would you build a system like this? What do you think about this ultimate performance? And I'll see you guys on the next video.